fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Just ask. Hey everybody, Joe Simons, like diamonds, back again, Salt Strong Unchurched. And this short little phrase, just ask, has, I would say, probably changed my life. It's helped me marry the right person. And I'll share that story in a second. It has helped me get raises, promotions, extra money. It is it's helped form relationships. It's even helped end a few relationships. It's so incredibly powerful. And I believe it's probably one of the main causes of internal conflict and issues in households and in businesses, etc. And let me start off with a story. So my very first job was in phone sales. I was in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had a great boss. His name was Steve, and they gave me what would be considered a draw, if you're familiar with that in the sales term. And if you're not, I'll just explain it real quick. A draw is when a company hires like a salesperson in general, and they give the salesperson a certain amount of money guaranteed. Let's just say it's $2,000 a month that you're just guaranteed just for showing up, if you will. So it's a draw against the commissions that you earn. So if you happen to earn exactly $2,000 of sales commissions that month, you just get the $2,000. If you made $3,000 of sales commissions that month, you get an extra $1,000 on top of the $2,000 draw. It's something they normally put there in the very beginning to help the salesperson out because it can be tough to build up a book of business and to get enough traction where you could get above that draw. So it's a way to help them out. It's essentially a loan, if you will, on your future or current sales commissions. So I had a draw for a few months. And so this was essentially hardly any salary. I mean, less than minimum wage salary. And it was really all commission based. And so they gave me a draw for the first 3 months. And then month 4, I was on my own. The draw goes completely away. I'm literally on my own. And they had a couple different thresholds of goals where, the one threshold, it really just got you where you were making, basically maybe enough to live on if you're lucky. And then the next one is really the big goal that you had to hit. And if you weren't hitting that kind of second goal, after a little while, they ended up just kind of parting ways with you. You just weren't really a fit. And so that very first month, I'm going all in. Like, dude, I am going for it as hard as I can. I am working like crazy. And end of the month comes, it's the last day. Like, I knew I was going to be close, and all the other sales guys, I'm the new guy. So they're trying to see, hey, is this kid going to cut it or not? Because I was a young little, 22-year-old. And living in Atlanta was, pretty expensive. And I missed the goal by like $170. And this is in an industry where we're bringing in sometimes a few $1 million in a month. And I think really my goal was like $2 million for like that month of this is the financial services industry. So I brought in $2 million, but I ended up hitting, 199. Something like it was off like $170, and I was like sick to my stomach because I didn't hit the goal. I missed it, and they had very strict rules that if you miss it, even by $1, you don't get the payment. And so, for me, what this caused in my personal life is I was young, and even though I didn't have a lot of expenses, I still had expenses. I had an expensive rent. I had a vehicle. I had, just surviving and living, and the amount of money I was going to take home, even after working so hard, was not even enough to pay my bills. Like, I was going to go negative there my first month off of that draw. And So I was so nervous. Like, I was like, I got to say something to the boss, man. But like, I was like, well, he's going to fire me. And so all these negative thoughts are going through my head. And I'm literally thinking the worst. I was like, man, he's going to fire me for asking for this, because they've already said the rules are that if you miss it by $1, you just don't get it. And I asked my parents, and my dad was just like, why don't you just ask? What's the worst that can happen? I was like, what if he fires me? My dad's like, he's not going to fire you. You busted at your tail. Like if you truly gave everything that you had and you explained that, the worst he's going to say is no, better luck next month. And so I asked for an appointment to see the head boss man, and I'm a nervous wreck. I'm 22. I've never done anything like this before, and I'm about to ask my boss, who just in my eyes, I'm like, oh man, he's losing all this money on me, and he's gonna fire me, and I didn't hit my goal, and I just asked, and I told him the truth. I was like, hey Steve, man, I don't know if you saw my numbers, but I missed it by $170. And, the irony is that next day, like the first day of the month, I had this massive wave of all these other deals that I've been putting together came through, and ended up having a mega month the next month. I was like, I literally just missed it by hours of it coming in. And I was like, I normally wouldn't even ask you for this because I know a rule's a rule, but I'm really going to have trouble even paying my bills. And, if I get to that next level, it was an extra couple $1,000s in my pocket, which is a lot for a 22-year-old in a given month. I mean, it's literally a $2,000 difference. And I was like, man, it would really mean the world to me if you could make this one exception, and I will never, he had my word, I'll never ask for it again. And he just kind of looked at me, and I'm sure he's so slow to make a decision in a good way. He was think through it, and he just looked at me. It felt like 10 minutes of silence, and I'm sweating over here, oh my gosh, he's going to fire me. I don't know what he's going to say. So I made the big ask. I just asked, and now I'm sitting here waiting on his answer. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's about to fire me. He's thinking of the right words to say. And he just looked at me and all of a sudden smiled. He's like, cool, you got it. I've noticed you've been working really, really hard, and I think you're going to be one of our top sales guys. What? Not only did he give me this, which is an extra $2,000 for a 22-year-old, he told me, that he thinks I'm going to be one of his top sales guys. And what that did for my confidence and really the future of my role there, I stayed that business for 9 years and did become the top sales guy after a while. That literally just changed, in my opinion, kind of changed my life and changed so much about how I deal with stress or stressful times, or even just big asks like that. And I never forgot that, because my dad was just the one that said those two words. He's like, just ask. What could go wrong? And now here I am as an adult dealing with my daughter, Shauna, who is, let's just say she's got ADHD and kind of gets distracted. And she had a test recently that we knew she knew all of the information. She had studied hard. She does, if any of you who have kids with ADHD or have it yourself, you can get distracted and sometimes don't finish stuff on time if you have a super distracted day or whatever it might be. And she comes back with the test score, and it's a 54. I mean, it's an F. And her mom and I are just first, kind of angry at Shauna. I'm like, Shauna, did you not know it? She's like, no, she's like, every single answer that I got to, I got it right. I literally didn't finish half the test, or, more, almost half. And otherwise she got every single one of the answers right. And so I was like, well, Shauna, we're not going to get involved as parents. This is your deal. You're now in 6th grade. This is, you're learning how to be an adult. You've got to just ask. And she's like, no. She did the same thing. I'm watching her and thinking about me and all those same feelings I had. And she's like, no. Oh my gosh, she could send me to the print. I was like, no, she's not going to. If you don't ask, the teacher is going to think you don't care, right? If you don't ask, the teacher is just going to assume you're fine and you're completely content with the 57. And she might not even know you didn't even finish. I don't know how these things are graded, if there's someone else who grades them and looks at, what happened. But all you have to do is ask. The worst that can happen is she says, no, that's your grade. You're stuck with it. So Shauna, guess what? She goes, all right, I'm going to tell her tomorrow. Did she do it? No. She put it off. So she came back. We're excited. When she gets home from school, it's like, how did it go? And she's like, oh, I just didn't get a chance to. It just didn't feel right. There's other kids in there. And Shauna, you're going to make an appointment with her, and you're going to just ask. She finally did. And what do you think the teacher said when Shauna explained it? That, hey, I literally didn't have the time to finish. I got super distracted looking at something or drawing doodles or whatever it was. And the teacher let her take it. And she ended up getting a 97 on the test, all because she just asked. Now, I recently had a great listener reach out and was asking about some just kind of overall relationship questions. And from someone who has, obviously been married now for 14 years, have dated a lot of people in my all throughout my teens and 20s. I got married right when I was 30. I had multiple long distance relationships with girls that I truly felt I was in love with. I think at the time I probably, would have even said, yeah, I think this, could be the one. Looking back on those two girls, but there was always just something that, that I don't know if it didn't feel right, if that's the right term, but there was always something, I guess, kind of holding me back from having peace with this being the one that I'm supposed to be with for the rest of my life. And here's what traditionally happens, and I mentioned this early, which is what causes a lot of these internal issues, is instead of just asking the other partner how they feel, or asking their partner, hey, like, what do you think about our relationship going forward? Like, is this ideal? When is it going to get, to the place we want it, where we're living together? In this case, I was doing the long distance thing. And instead, I didn't do that, right? I ended up, talking to my friends, like, I'd complain about, oh man, it just stinks having to go drive, 3 hours to see them every time, or get on a plane in one case. And I'd sit there and just more complain about it. And then when I was with the person, it would be pretty happy-go-lucky because we hadn't seen each other in a while. But then I get back and I'd sit there and complain, and never really had an honest, just completely candid and unfiltered conversation with that person. It wasn't until I did that I realized, you know what, they were actually feeling kind of the same thing as well. And they were complaining to their, best girlfriends about the whole relationship and how it just wasn't ideal. And that, they were somewhat sure that, I might be the one, but wasn't sure. And it wasn't until we had an honest conversation where I just asked that all of a sudden, it was almost like God opened the door for me to see, all right, this wasn't the right person. We were able to part ways as friends with both of the girls in particular. And it, ironically, Lauren, who I'm married to today, was also a long distance relationship. And I did just ask, and it turns out she's like, no, I really do feel like we're meant to be together. And here's exactly what I'm done. For her, it was going to school in Augusta when I was living in Atlanta. And she's like, I'm done in 6 months. Let's just make it through that. So I was like, all right, cool. And I was madly in love, and we obviously did it for 6 months. There was an end in sight, if you will. And here we are, happily married ever since. So I would just say, just ask. It's amazing what happens when you just ask. I look at all the issues we've had in our business, Salt Strong. I've looked at the issues that in my past, prior life when I was an employee at other companies, and most of those internal issues happened because of a lack of communication. When you just ask, you're opening the door to have a clean and open line of communication. The opposite is going behind the other person's back and talking trash about them, or just complaining about them. I'm telling you, the magic happens, and God starts answering your prayers and your questions when you just ask. And it also starts with just asking Him, right? So many of us sit there and ask our friends or our family or our BFF, we'll ask them or complain about the situation, and sometimes forget just to ask God. And for me, what I've done, and has worked incredibly well for many, many years, is I don't ask God just to like, hey, is this the right way I'm supposed to go? Or is this the right person? Or is this the right partner? Is this the right business decision? Whatever it is, I always ask, like, God, please, please, please open the door to this path, this person, whatever it is, either so wide that I would have to be blind not to see that you want me to take this leap of faith or this next step forward, and or shut it so hard that I can't break through it no matter how hard I try. And every time I've prayed that, and sometimes I have to pray it many times because God doesn't open or shut that door as quick as I would personally like. It's always on his time, which is perfect. But I sometimes have to ask that multiple times, but there will usually always be that moment. And normally it's when I just ask, not just ask God, but ask that person or ask a few more questions about that decision to someone else. Or maybe sometimes like on 2 episodes ago where it's a random person who calls me out of the blue and opens my eyes to something. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. Usually in almost every scenario, when I've prayed on that multiple times, one of those 2 things happen. Either that door opens so wide where it's just like nothing can stop me from going through it, or it slams shut so hard that I know I am supposed to go a different direction or a different path or a different person, different business decision, whatever it is. So I would first always just ask God, and then just ask the person or the scenario, whatever it is. There's usually someone that you can ask that question to and just have an open conversation. You will be amazed at the magic that happens when we communicate, right? Every single thing that we're doing here in life with relationships with God our Father, to our own parents, to siblings, to kids, to business partners, to wives, spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, it all starts with open communication, which is why I say just ask. What's the worst that can happen? And so many of us think the worst is like I did with my old boss, Steve. Oh, he's going to fire me, or my daughter. Oh, they're just going to give me an F and never want to ever help me out again. And the irony is, both of those scenarios, the person that I just asked, or that my daughter just asked, not only helped, but was glad to help, and was really glad that we actually came and just asked. So the next time you're in the scenario, or even if one of your kids or coworkers or someone comes to you complaining about something, or this isn't fair, look them in the eyes and say, have you asked? Just ask. I love that. It's so simple, and yet very few people practice it. I struggle with it because we're always thinking about the worst that can happen, and very rarely does it. And even if it does, it's not the end of the world. It's not like it's a life or death scenario in most cases. If you have something that is, I would maybe consult someone else. But you know where I'm going with this. Just ask. It's so incredibly powerful. I'd love to hear your stories. If you ever had one of those where something changed the direction of your life, or maybe met the person of your dreams, or maybe got away from the person that you weren't supposed to marry, or a wrong job or the right job, whatever it is, I'd love to hear it. Joe@saltstrong.com. Otherwise, I will be praying for all of you. And if there's any specific prayer request or anything on your mind, hit me up. I love hearing from the amazing listeners. You guys rock. Otherwise, I will talk to you on the next episode.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul. It was pain.